Don't eat things you can't easily digest. It's not helping you. Okay, you'd be better off eating something that's easy to digest that has fewer nutrients, because the nutrients are much more readily available to your body if you can digest the food. If you can't digest the food, you're not getting anything into your body. Every species on the planet has a species-specific diet. And this is true even though animal species also have different blood types. So it doesn't matter what blood type an animal has, every lion's going to eat the same food. There's no vegetarian lions because they have a different blood type than other ones, right? They all eat the same food. Every cow eats grass regardless of its blood type, okay? The blood type theory is just one of many theories which has been debunked. There's no science to support this. There is the reason that some people think that there's something to it, and this is just one example, but the people on the planet, many people here, who come from Northwestern European origin, right? They're the only people on the planet that can actually tolerate dairy products, cow milk and dairy products. Only really tolerated by people from Northwestern Europe. And these are the same places where the most dairy gets consumed, including the US, where many people have come from, England and Ireland and all these countries. So the US, the UK, Sweden, Switzerland, Holland, Denmark, maybe forgetting one, but these 7 countries are among the 8 highest consumers of dairy products. And these are where the people tend to tolerate dairy products. And so what's happened is years of consumption, the body begins to be able to adapt a little bit. But as we talked about before some of you got here, highest rates of osteoporosis also occur in those same countries. Dairy does nothing to protect you, and it's not good for anyone. It's actually causing osteoporosis. So the fact that people can tolerate it might lead some people to believe that certain people should consume it because they tolerate it. And this is what would have happened. Now, I've talked to geneticists about this. I had dinner with a PhD fellow at the Epigenetics conference in London a few years ago when it was there. And he said, yeah, it's probably true that if you went back far enough, all the people from one area would have had the same blood type. And of course, everyone's mixed, right? Has anyone see the video that circulated a couple of years ago on Facebook, where this was a real experiment? They took a bunch of people, they brought them in, and they like were talking about where they were from. It was interesting because people would say, "I'm 100% Irish, and Irish are the best," right? And then someone else would come in there, they'd be, well, my heritage is this, and what they did was they did DNA testing, and everyone was a mix of a whole bunch of different places. And in fact, there were 2 people, this was a group of maybe 30 people, there were 2 people in there who were distant cousins and didn't know it, never met each other. And they told them because of their DNA, we can see you guys are connected. It was a fascinating thing. I mean, some people, like literally said, we're the best, nobody else is as good as I am, or I don't think that people from these places are very good, and then they had some of that heritage themselves. And so what's happened is blood types are no longer going to be true to country because everyone's mixed. But it would have been, okay? Wheat is another one. Wheat's harmful to every single human being, but there are populations that tolerate it better than others because of many years' history of using it. Doesn't mean we should keep using it. It's harmful to everyone. Every species has digestive physiology that's specifically adapted to a particular diet over millions of years of evolution. So if you looked at a cow and a sheep and a goat and you didn't know what they ate, but you could see inside their body, you would know they ate the same diet because they have essentially the same system. And they have 4 stomachs that are filled with colonies of bacteria to digest cellulose, okay? Cellulose, which might contain everything we need. Contains protein, contains carbohydrates, contains fat, contains nutrients. We should eat grass, right? There's only one little problem. We can't digest it. Okay? Every species basically needs the same stuff. all species need the same 3 macronutrients I just named and the same basic micronutrients. There are some exceptions that prove the rule. Rats, for instance, don't need to eat vitamin C. They can make it in their bodies. They need it, but they don't have to eat it. We have to eat it, right? 4 to 6 weeks without vitamin C. Hold questions, please. 4 to 6 weeks without vitamin C, and you develop scurvy. If you're eating. You know, it's interesting, and a little aside, I said yesterday during the orientation, we don't have to worry about getting nutrients. I've taken 400 people 6 weeks or longer, and no one's ever developed scurvy or any other deficiency disease, fasting. Because when you're fasting, it's a completely different physiological state. You don't need nutrients the same way that you do when you're eating, okay? But we need to eat vitamin C if we're eating food because our bodies can't make it. Some species like rats can make it themselves. We need to eat essential fatty acids. They're called essential because, at least the theory is, that we can't make them ourselves. I think that's absolutely false. I think what might be true is that the average person can't make enough of them to meet their body's need themselves, the way the body works. It may well be that if we all ate optimally, we'd have no trouble getting what we needed without ever eating concentrated fat. Now, we do get essential fatty acids in all the grass we're eating, or if not grass, watermelon and papayas and lettuce, because the cell nucleus of every living cell is made of fat. And the cell structure of every living cell is made of protein, which means we're always eating protein and fat, always. And we need tiny amounts of it, so we don't ever need to eat concentrated sources of either. Okay, we can always get what we need. Of course, you can't be strong if you're not eating a lot of protein, right? I don't know. Chimpanzees get 90% of their calories from fruit, and a 75-pound chimpanzee is approximately 10 times stronger than the average man. So do with that what you like. Seems to me you don't need to eat a ton. In fact, the strongest animals on the planet are almost universally vegetarian. Okay? People think, oh, you have to eat meat to be strong. A lot of guys think you have to eat meat to be manly. And of course, what's interesting is the more meat and animal products you eat, the less manly you become. The hydraulics stop working, the more protein and garbage you take in. So there is, it makes perfect sense that there is one diet for every human being. It's not a popular idea. People want to believe that what works for you might not work for me. But there's no science to really support that. Maybe we're the one exception. 25.5 million other species all have a species-specific diet. And we share our digestive physiology, just as the cows, sheep, and goats are all very similar. Our systems are virtually identical to the chimpanzees and bonobos, which shouldn't be surprising because we're over 99% genetically identical to them. So maybe it's not a surprise that our digestive tracts are also essentially the same. There is a difference. One difference is that their large intestine is proportionally a little bit longer than ours is compared to the small intestine. Again, ours is very short, 5 to 6 feet long, the large intestine. Theirs is a bit longer proportionally to their small. And what that suggests is that they can handle more roughage than we can. And yet, roughage. That's complex starches, fiber, bulk, complex fiber that we have trouble with. Okay, so
leaves that they take from trees.
Sorry, what?
Leaves.
Well, it could be leaves, and it could be other things. Leaves are just one source. In the heaviest part of the rainy season, in the jungle, when there's less fruit available, they're forced to eat more other things. They eat leaves, they eat shoots, they eat roots, they eat pith, other soft, tender plant parts. Okay, because that's mostly what they have available to them. They eat some out meat, according to the experts. Might be twice a year. It's not a very significant part of their diet, but they're eating mostly plants. And when there's not much fruit, they're eating mostly soft plants. They'll take the tip of a soft, tender leaf and throw the rest away. The tip, and throw the rest away. what do you think is the softest part, the most tender part of a leaf? The tip. And they're throwing the rest away, okay? And they don't eat the dense leaves at all. Why not? They're too hard to digest. You know, I can remember 25 years ago, there weren't many, but there was a raw vegan restaurant in LA and one in San Francisco and one in New York. And you could go to these places and get a salad that had lettuce in it. Not anymore. For the last 10, 12 years, all these restaurants have are kale salads. That's all they have, right? All of them, I mean, pretty much. So I know because I've been to all of them. I've spoken at many of them. And if I'm going to be speaking in New York, we'll send a message to our list and say, hey, going to be in New York, you know, I'm speaking at 7 o'clock. There was a place called Bonobos, which no longer exists. I've spoke there maybe 4 times. I'll be at Bonobos at 7 o'clock. I'll be there at 6 o'clock. Come meet me for dinner, right? And everyone's sitting around the table having a kale salad. And I'll say to everyone, how do you like your salad? Oh, I love kale. I love it. Oh, really? How do you feel after eating it? Oh, not that good. A little bloated, kind of gassy, right? That's most people's response. Why do you think that is?
Can't digest it.
Can't digest it because it contains cellulose and other complex carbohydrates that our bodies don't digest very well. Now, why is kale a superfood? What does that mean?
Full of nutrients.
It's loaded with nutrients, right? Loaded with nutrients, kind of like the tabletop, which was made from a tree.
Many times here, right?
Which this tree, you know, the tree has tons of nutrients in it. Does that mean we should eat it? What do you think? We can't digest wood. Okay, broccoli looks like a little tree, has a structure, right? It's woody, it's dense, it's cellulose that gives it that structure. I don't care how much you like it, you can't digest it. You've got 2 options. If you eat it raw, by the way, kale, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, collard greens, cabbage, these are all cruciferous vegetables, and they all contain goitrogenic compounds. Goitrogenic compounds are compounds that actually harm the thyroid gland. If you eat them raw, these goitrogenic compounds can harm your thyroid gland. If you juice them, even worse because it's more concentrated, okay? There's no reason to eat this stuff. You can't digest it, don't eat it. No species on the planet regularly makes a habit of eating things it can't digest because there's no point in that. And by the way, there's some research published a few years ago. They took a group of people, they sat them down, they measured how much vitamin A equivalency units the kale contained. Now, equivalency units because kale contains vitamin A and it contains beta-carotene, which the body converts to vitamin A. So they calculated how much vitamin A equivalency units there is in the specific serving size of kale. And then they fed it to people, and then they measured how much vitamin A they got from the food. They took the same people at another time, and they fed them, I can't remember if now it's papayas or mangoes. And they measured how much vitamin A equivalency units there is from the beta-carotene, and then how much did they get? The leaves contained twice as much as the serving of fruit. The average person got twice as much from the fruit than they got from the kale. What does that mean? 4 times easier to get it from the fruit. This is why I've been saying for 25, 30 years, don't eat things you can't easily digest. It's not helping you. Okay, you'd be better off eating something that's easy to digest that has fewer nutrients because the nutrients are much more readily available to your body if you can digest the food. If you can't digest the food, you're not getting anything into your body. This makes sense to everyone. So all these cruciferous vegetables, they might have tons of nutrients, just like the table. Okay, don't eat it anyway because you can't digest it. By the way, you can destroy the goitrogenic compounds by cooking food, by cooking these foods. You can destroy the goitrogenic compounds so they don't hurt you. Unfortunately, you also destroy a lot of the nutrients, and you create toxic compounds. So when you eat cooked food, there's an immune response. Your body responds as if it's been poisoned, okay, when you eat cooked food, but only because it has. Okay? Okay, that's what's going on. So those are your options. Eat it raw and it's going to hurt you, you can't digest it, or cook it and you're losing nutrients and it's actually now toxic in a different way. Why not just eat the things that we're naturally attracted to that our bodies can actually handle, that we can actually digest. Now, it's crazy. I mean, I had a guy arguing with me on one of my videos, comment saying, fructose is bad for you. Right? There are tons of studies that show fructose is bad for you. And I'm like, really? There are tons of studies that say that high fructose corn syrup is bad for you. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at a fractionated product from something we should have never been eating in the first place, but they're taking just one piece of it, right? A sweetener they make from corn. And they're seeing that, yes, this concentrated, simple carbohydrate has very negative effects on the body. And he's saying, no, it's the fructose. I said, hang on, show me one study that shows that fruit's bad for you. You won't find one. There isn't any. Okay? And it's an absurd idea. Again, think about this. I mean, this may come as a surprise to you. Let me back up before I ask my question. But when a cow wakes up in the morning, I don't mean in the U.S. where they live in metal buildings where there's 10,000 cows. I mean here, where the cows wake up and they're lying on the grass. And they wake up and they look around and they go, holy crap, I died and went to heaven. I'm surrounded by grass. Because they're looking at grass going, wow, that looks delicious. Wow, look at that piece over there. That's amazing. I've never seen such good looking grass before. Right? Does anybody here walk across the grass and have their mouth start watering? Anyone look down and say, well, that looks, it's making me hungry. This grass, I'm hungry now, right? Of course not. We're not attracted to it. Every species is naturally attracted to its natural diet. If you walk through the nature, whatever part of the world you want, think about what is most attractive to you in its natural form. In other words, you might be used to eating, maybe you've grown up eating squirrel pot pie. Right? You think squirrels are delicious. But you'd have to take it home and kill it and skin it and cook it and debone it and all that. I'm not talking about that, right? Carnivores, I don't know if you know this, they don't do any of that stuff, right? They bite through the jugular vein, they drink all the blood, they tear it open, eat the innards, and then they eat the rest of the thing, the whole thing, right? Spit out the fur maybe, spit out the teeth. And does that sound attractive to anyone here? Does anyone really think that we're natural carnivores? Of course not. Of course not, right? You see a bunny rabbit, does your mouth water? Oh, you go, isn't that cute? Right? Isn't that the natural instinct? I think so. What are we attracted to that we don't need to do anything to in order to eat? What are you most attracted to? You don't have to process, you don't have to cook, you don't have to anything, right? What is that?
Fruit.
Peaches.
Fruit. We are naturally attracted to fruit. We're attracted to the smell of the fruit. We're attracted to the bright colors, right? I mean, we see a fruit we've never seen before. We go, that looks good. That's our natural instinct, okay? That doesn't happen with anything else. Has anyone ever seen a green vegetable growing on the ground and thought, ooh, that looks delicious? I don't think that happens, okay? We are, like our closest primate relatives, we are frugivores. Now, why do you think people say, I mean, I was teaching this in a seminar years ago in our first location, 20 years ago, and there was a doctor there that day. The doctor was a woman. Her niece, she showed up with a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old maybe, 12-year-old girl. And I said, oh, you brought your granddaughter. And she said, actually, she brought me. She's been following you online, right? And she insisted I bring her to the seminar. How's that for a turned-on 12-year-old, right? And the doctor at one point raised her hand and says, no, humans are omnivores. Because that's what they teach people, even today. I said, how do you know we're omnivores? She said, we eat everything. I said, right. If you go up on the roof and you jump off flapping your arms, does that make you a bird? The behavior doesn't make the thing. The physiology determines what you are, not your behavior. You can act like a bird, but it's not going to end well, okay? It's not going to end any better than it does if you eat like an omnivore. You can do that. You will develop cancer and heart disease, though. That's where that disease is going to take you. Okay? There's no science to support that. Look at the physiology. It's identical to the other frugivores. Now remember, frugivore means, those of you that are here already, what does it mean? Fruit-based diet. It doesn't mean you eat only fruit. Fruitarian, it's a term I don't normally use. Why not? Because it has no accepted scientific meaning. What does it mean? Some people say it means you eat only fruit. Other people say it means you eat fruit and greens. Other people say it means you eat fruit and greens and nuts and seeds. And there are probably someone out there that thinks it means you eat fruit, leaves, nuts and seeds, and occasionally a Big Mac and some French fries. Just every once in a while, you're still a fruitarian. Right? It has no accepted scientific meaning. So I'd rather not confuse anybody by calling myself that, using that term. We are all frugivores, no matter what we eat. In the same way that we're bipeds, we have 2 legs, even if we walk on all 4s. You can do that if you want to. Okay? Or don't walk at all. How many of you saw WALL-E? The movie WALL-E. Takes place in the future, 100 or so years from now. If you've never seen this, all humans are too fat to walk. They all have little electric scooters they get around on. Yeah, you know what? It's like, oh, isn't that like an interesting fantasy? Yeah, have you been to Walmart? Crazy, it's crazy. I mean, we're actually headed in this direction. Right? We're headed in this direction. And don't forget, you know, if you're concerned, there was a question at the orientation, or a comment, I think Robert may have used, saying something about, someone said something about, people are going to think I'm skinny. Yeah, probably. I mean, if you live in a healthy body, most people are going to think you're too skinny. Who cares what they think, right? I don't know about you guys. I care about how I feel and function, and that's it. In a world where most people are overweight and obese, if you're actually healthy, most people are going to think you're too big, too skinny, right? Remember, I said this recently, but when I was a kid, I went to a pretty big school. It was a new neighborhood, you know, a lot of young families. There were probably 300 or 400 kids in the school. There might have been 1 or 2 fat kids on the playground. Everyone else was skinny. Now it's exactly the opposite. Okay? Exactly the opposite. Why? Are we healthier? Is that because we're healthier now? We should be bigger, and now we're bigger? Of course not. Of course not. We're much less healthy. You know, diabetes is interesting because type 1 diabetes used to be called juvenile diabetes, and type 2 used to be called adult onset diabetes. You can't use those terms anymore because half of all type 2 diabetics are children. They develop diabetes usually as a result of obesity as children. That's how the world's gone. There's nothing healthier about anything around diet. Diets have gotten worse over time. Okay? Much worse. So, you know, it's the processed food, it's the animal products, it's hormones, it's all the crap that people eat. That's doing this. But we were all skinny as kids, and why do we ever get much bigger than that? Why should we?
Stress.
I mean, I know how it happens. It happens because people overeat and eat crap, and they don't exercise, they don't take care of themselves. But my question is there a good reason? I mean, should it be that way? Do you think we should naturally, our belt size should increase as we get older? I don't think so. I think we were all very healthy as kids, being very lean. Why should it be different? You know, the facts are that with the exceptions of animals that need body fat to regulate temperature, like for instance, in both very hot and very cold conditions, animals use body fat to regulate temperature. Aside from species in those conditions, the leanest, the healthiest members of each species tend to be among the leanest. Most species, right? The healthiest members tend to be among the leanest. It's no different for humans. Okay, you know, in nature, animals sometimes have to go a long time without getting a meal. Depending on where you live, there are times where, in the Kalahari Desert, for instance, in Africa, there's a rainy season. Everything turns green, the food is abundant, but it doesn't last very long. And then it goes away, and it's dry, and it's very hard to find water or anything else, and animals go a long time between meals, okay, living in those conditions. Living in those conditions, it might be beneficial to carry some fat reserves so you can survive for a long time. Or, like reptiles, to be able to go into a state of suspended animation, where you're alive but barely moving, barely functioning. Everything slows way down. Your metabolism slows way down. So you're not needing much fuel. Okay, that's what happens. But I'm willing to bet that everybody here, probably at home, if not now, maybe you cleaned it out because you were going to be away for a while, but typically most people at home at any given time have probably 2 or 3 weeks worth of calories in their kitchen, right? And even if you don't, most of you probably live in or near a city where within 15 minutes drive, there are probably a dozen places open 24 hours a day that can provide all the calories you need. In other words, we no longer need to walk around with a month's worth of calories on our bodies. And we're all doing it. I mean, even people who are very lean can typically go 6 weeks. Even lean people have 6 weeks of calories. But the average person's now got 2 months or 3 months worth of calories or even more. I said yesterday, I think it was at the orientation, so maybe not everybody here heard this. Maybe you've all already heard it, but my longest client fast was 4.5 months. Okay, there was a medical study years ago where the average person went more than 5 months without eating anything. And the longest fast in history, recorded fast, was 382 days. No food. Okay, these are people that have a lot of reserves. Okay, that's not useful, right? The benefits of carrying all that reserve around, those benefits are far outweighed by all the negative, all the harm to your body of carrying all that excess weight around. There's a few people here that came in with more than, maybe a lot more than they need, and that's harmful. It's harmful to the knees and the hips and joints and the heart, right? It's not beneficial to us. Now, maybe if you lived in a place where you can only get a meal every 6 months, maybe you'd want to have a bunch of reserves. But that's not the case for any of us. It's just not necessary. It's not useful. So what we want to do, I think, is understand what our bodies are adapted for. Okay? We need all the macronutrients. We get them all from eating fruit and salad. We need all the micronutrients. We get them all from eating fruit and salad. Nothing gives us more micronutrients, by the way, than fruit. Nothing gives us more vitamins. Nothing gives us more phytonutrients. Nothing gives us more enzymes. More minerals. Yeah, you can get more minerals from vegetables. But when your body's in balance, you don't need a lot of minerals. When the body's out of balance, it's minerals that are out of balance. So we get the body balanced so we don't have to consume tons of minerals. We get all we need from eating fruit and some leafy greens. Okay, how about more protein? We don't need it. It doesn't help us. It makes us age and die faster. Okay, how about more fat? We don't need it. Concentrated fat's not helping anyone. There's no benefit to that. Okay? So I'm going to suggest to you that like our closest now the primates, I started to say earlier, in the rainiest months of the year where they're eating less fruit, primatologists find their nutrient intake goes way down. When they eat more vegetation and less fruit, they get less nutrients. They get the most nutrients from eating fruit. Remember the kale papaya thing. People are getting way more vitamin A from the fruit than from something that contains twice as much of it. It's not about how much something contains. It's not about what goes into your mouth. It's about what gets to your cells. If we can't easily digest something, it's not helping us. There's a famous vegan doctor who teaches people to eat the most nutrient-dense foods possible. He also has a line of supplements, which everybody needs. Well, if you eat the most nutrient-dense foods possible, you'll need supplements because you can't get the nutrients from the most nutrient-dense foods. If you eat the foods that are actually physiologically appropriate for our bodies, you don't need any supplements. Why would you? I mean, 25.5 million species on the planet, The ones in nature, are they taking supplements? I'm not sure, but I don't think they use that many supplements really. Maybe just a few, right? Of course not. Every species on the planet can get everything it needs from its natural diet. So can we. We don't need any supplements. I've never taken any in 27 years. My clients that get their bodies clean and then stick to an optimal diet don't need any supplements.